Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Elaine Hamill from Girls at Work, a nonprofit that empowers girls through woodworking and building using equipment such as power tools. Located in Manchester, New Hampshire, Elaine was the founder and she now serves as the executive director. During the program, we're learning why and how Girls at Work came about. We'll hear about the various programs it has to offer, and in the process come to better understand and appreciate how girls are taught life lessons, gain confidence, and discover their full potential through the use of power tools and the building of various woodworking progress. Let's start by meeting Elaine and then finding out all about Girls at Work. Welcome, Elaine. So delighted you're able to be here.
Thanks for having me on.
As a former educator, I was quite interested to first find out about Girls at Work, eager to learn more and have you inform viewers. But before we begin, I think it would be of interest if you'd share just a little bit about your background and how that led to the development, the creation of Girls at Work.
Sure. Well, I think ideally I was not a good student. Your conventional learning just never really worked for me, and I was a very hands-on learner, and so I left college after a couple years, and I taught myself how to build because back in the 80s, as a female, it was not an option to learn how to build. It was very frowned upon. So I bought some books and I bought some tools and I figured it out. And I know what it did for me, and I knew it could do that for many more girls. And so that's how this all sort of, after many years in the field renovating people's homes, I found out that the most exciting part was working with kids and having kids tap into their potential through building. So here we are 24 years later.
That's incredible. What was some of the history and the progression from your sort of inspiration, motivation to have such an enterprise? And how'd you get it off the ground and some of the challenges to make it all come together like it is today?
I think I could spend an hour on challenges, but I won't. So I grew up with five brothers, so I'm much tougher than I look, and it came in pretty handy. But I think so I had taken a neighbor in whose parents were struggling with addiction, and so as a contractor, I was renovating homes, and it was hard to take her to different job sites. I mean, she didn't want to be there, and so I signed her up for summer camp. And at the time, I was a struggling contractor, and I asked the camp director if they needed anything built because I could build stuff in exchange for the cost of camp because it was pretty expensive. Um, and so she said, come and teach the girls. And so 30 some odd years ago, I went to summer camp and spent a week. I set up shop in a pavilion. I just brought a bunch of my equipment. And these kids, they'd build 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, they were just hooked. And so from there, camp directors go to conferences and they learn about, who's doing what. And my phone started ringing a lot for summer camp. And so I started traveling all over New England. And I would set up shop and I couldn't really keep up. So in 99, I decided to build a barn at my home. And so I started programs there. But I started hearing more and more often that from educators that if I wanted to have a deeper impact, it had to be more than a one-off. And so we moved to the city and in Manchester, New Hampshire, and we moved into an old school building and converted that into a workshop and then two workshops. And then that building went on the market after several years. And so we were fortunate enough to end up in the Amherst Mill Yard, which is a phenomenal location. And when our building was going on the market, we were just renting at the time. I reached out to Senator Maggie Hassan and I said, I need some help. I need a location.
Mm.
And she said, you can't, you have to stay in the city. I said, I know, but I need help. And so she connected me with Don Bossi, who is the president of First Robotics. And they own the building. And so this was a storage area that we converted. And the first conversion was 7,000 square feet. And price tag was just over $600,000 and we did it for just under 200. That's how much the community stepped up for us.
Wow.
So it's been a really, that's in a nutshell. It's been, we've expanded since we added 1,500 square feet because we have a kindness room. Because so many of our kids don't have food at home and need school supplies and boots and shoes and winter coats. And so, you know, there's a lot of ways to empower kids. And so we initially do it with woodworking classes, but you know, now a new coat in the winter when you're cold. Or groceries when there's no food at home. There's
Wow.
many different ways to empower. So we try to encompass the whole builder and empower it in as many ways as we can while we've got them in our care.
That's incredible, the way you've developed the overall enterprise and the reach it does, as we're going to hear about the different programs that you offer throughout the year. Here we see just a nice shot of some of the premises, and maybe just a word about the setup that you have, the layout, and what you have available for the participants.
So this room is very special because we had a very dear friend that we lost in February of 2020, and so we dedicated this shop to Cassie. And those are photos of kids in Cassie Strong boots that Timberland had made. Excuse me, and always do, never done was her sort of what she lived by. But so if you can see on the right, all the pre-cut lumber, so the kids don't use saws, they use cordless screw guns and palm sanders, and quite a lot of critical thinking. Over the years, I've used everything and anything with kids, and I've had an opportunity to really, I've worked with thousands of girls, and I've had an opportunity to really try everything. And I always thought that it was the saw that was such a game changer, but it really isn't. It's the completion of a project. It's pushing through all the challenges. It's so I've been able to remove the saws, right, which reduces the risk factor, right, the danger. And so a cordless screw gun and a palm sander are still both power tools, right? But I mean, there's considerable less danger involved in those two tools, and those you can accomplish a lot mastering those two tools, and they do. And so we have two gentlemen every morning who are here prepping all our lumber. So all the lumber is ready to go, and the kids get bundles, and each bundle turns into whatever the project is they're doing at the time. So they'll do small projects. They have a little desk that's got a drawer in it. They do a bookcase. They do benches. We do a number of different projects that can happen over time, so they're able to complete them and take them home.
Terrific, terrific. Now, one of the main programs is the after-school program. Can you give us an overview of what's involved there, how people sign up, participate, and what's involved in the overall program, please?
Sure. So the after-school program is a 7-week program, and the girls come once a week for 7 weeks. And so it's about a 2-hour block. When they show up, they sit at the counter and they'll have snack, and we talk about their day and kind of have them decompress, and then shift them into some breathing exercises to get them centered and to get them focused. And review the rules every week, and then they head into the shop. And there's a lot of clamps in order to hold their lumber, so their 2 hands are on the tool. And as you'll see in that picture, there's very little required from the staff. Typically, we're tightening clamps, but the staff's not really allowed to use the tools. Because I would argue that the most important part of what we do is providing a struggle. Because I believe that these kids, if they push through a struggle, right, that's where all the empowerment is, on the other side of that struggle. And so, for example, I was shadowing an instructor one day, and I watched as all the kids were saying, "Is this right? Is this right? Is this right?" And so the instructor was answering, and so then I took the instructor aside. I said, listen, none of that is that's not okay. I said, your answer to them is, I don't know, what do you think? Right? Because we don't want to train our kids to look for exterior support, right? Like, okay, so they think it's okay. What do you think? Like, and that's, I think, part of the problem in the way we educate kids is we don't put it back on them. We don't help them to figure out what's going on. Like, what are you thinking? What has to happen that's different? Like, so it's really challenging to teach the instructors how to teach, because a lot of them are teachers, right? So, I mean, they teach self-reliance, right? They teach that to be dependent, where I'm obsessed with independence. Like they can't even ask to go to the bathroom. They have to give us a heads up and say, go to the bathroom, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it's, that's not how life works. These kids need to be able to function on their own. And as you can see in the picture, they do.
Not being an educator by training yourself, how did you develop and evolve this philosophy and approach to teaching and learning?
I mean, to be honest, like I said, I mean, I was a struggling student, and I loved art. I mean, I really connected with art. And I was pretty fascinated by history, but excuse me, I think we just take the wrong approach to education. I mean, I think we're not giving our kids a chance to learn, right? Kids are super smart. Kids are really, really smart. And it's interesting because we had a couple of different doctoral groups do a study on us. And I learned that what I do is called the Socratic method. There's actually a method to it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not from the world of academia, right? I taught myself how to build because I hated school.
Yeah.
So like, I know what works for them based on what works for me. So I have a tendency to just head in that direction with, like, okay, there's so much up here and they're so smart and they're so capable. And our school system is designed to teach them anything but, right? So I think once I learned that I use the Socratic method, or that's what I've been doing, who knew, right? I had no idea, right? So it was really interesting to learn about what I was doing through the lens of an academic, because I didn't understand. I knew what worked. I knew how to reach these kids. I mean, these kids, we target kids who can't afford to be here, right? We target kids who have lost parents, who are with grandparents who don't really want them, who are in foster care. I mean, you name it, right? But I mean, if you think about it, these kids have to be extremely resilient to survive.
Mhm.
So take that resiliency and it's like, put them in a shop and believe in them like you never have. And it's just like, it's incredible.
And I know from my experience as an educator, people put into settings like woodworking um, to show a whole other both level of engagement and an intelligence as far as solving problems that they might not exhibit in the quote unquote traditional classroom.
That is so true, because the level of engagement, these kids are self-driven. Like, we don't have to say, come on, let's go, let's go. We don't have to do anything. Like, they're on a mission, right? They're turned on. They're feeling smart, they're feeling strong, they're feeling capable. They have somebody supporting them saying you can do this, right? So all of those pieces in place, and they just take off, right? They're on it. And their level of engagement is incredible. It's really exciting to see. I mean, I don't get to do classes anymore. Every now and then I get to fill in, but I walk in there and it's so awesome. It's just so
Yeah.
awesome to see these kids learning and loving it. And they walk out with their little furniture, right? And they're giant, right? I remember years ago when we were at our other location, there's a school at the next block, and kids had built a bookcase. And I said, if you want to put them in the truck, I'll take them over to the school and you can have them for show and tell, because I wanted to bring them to school for show and tell. Well, when an 8-year-old builds a bookcase, you don't tell them what to do with that bookcase.
Mhm.
So they said, no, we're taking them home. And I said, you're taking them home? And they're like, yeah. So they all walk back to the school, and then their parents walk over to the school to pick them up. They all live in that area. And the next morning, the assistant principal was a woodworker. And the next morning, he sent me a note. He said, I can't even tell you how excited I was this morning to see this, but he said I saw, back then we had about 15 kids in the classes, and
Hmm.
I saw all these little kids all around, walking from all different directions with a backpack over one shoulder and a bookcase over the other.
Oh, fabulous.
And I was like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think true authentic learning that you provide is very limited in schools, as you said, given the other priorities that we have, which is a discussion for many other programs. But let's move on to hear more about the next program. We'd like to find out about what goes on at summer camp, please.
Summer camp is pretty cool. And, you know, when you talk about authentic learning, it's like, if we could replace these ridiculous state tests with authentic learning, life would change for every student out there. And so during the summer, we have 7 different weeks of summer camp, and the kids can come for a week. In the morning, they'll build, and then in the afternoon, there's all these different STEAM activities. So every day is a different activity. So one day is science, one day is technology, one engineering, art, math. So every day they do a different activity. And so, I mean, to engage them in building, you know, when they finish a project, their question is, hey, what else can I do?
Hmm.
So we had to develop, well, what else can you do? So now here's this whole room with computers and with 3D printers and with laser cutters. And so now they're thinking, wait, what else, right? So now you're going to build upon that experience of, because I mean, half my kids can't tie their shoes, right?
Mm.
So can't tie up their hair. So think about the neglect, right? Or the lack of support in the environments they call home, right? But when you use an extreme measure like building, right, you kind of surpass all that neglect, and you put them in a place of like bigger than, much more than, right, and overly capable. So it sort of trumps the fact that they feel like crap because they can't tie their shoes. So it's, you know, it's finding a balance where, okay, so is it worth teaching them how to tie their shoes? Sure, in the summer we can, because we have them for a lot of time.
Mm.
But the school year, no, you got to get them built up in a way that blows everything out of the water. And girls don't build. I mean, think about it. There's, how many programs exist for girls to build?
No, I think in general, that type of hands-on learning is few and far between in schools for any range of populations. And I think, as you mentioned, it is due to, I think, the pressure of covering so much curriculum and being responsible for things like state and national tests for sure.
But you know, that's so insane. I mean, what the hell good does that do these kids? Like, what good, great, it's making $1 bazillion for these companies that are creating these tests. Okay, let's look at the bigger picture here, because our students are missing out, our teachers are missing out. What are we doing? Look at, see that picture right there, that picnic table?
Yeah.
That's a middle school build. So I went to the school on a, so I go to the school and I worked with every single girl in the school. We did shaker pegboards, and I did it within the class structure, so I didn't disrupt anything. And I gave them all a taste of woodwork, right? And then I say, the real reason I'm here, and I show them a picture of the picnic table. And I tell them, like, I want you here to build picnic tables, and they're like, yeah, we're sleeping in, it's a day off. I'm like, really? You're gonna be empowered by sleeping in? I need you to show up. You need to show up, because I call them up, they don't know what to make of me, right? They're here and I wear Timberlands and I give them power tools. Like they just don't know what to make of me. And so the first build we had 50 spots, and we were still at the end of the pandemic. And I was at the school for 2 weeks, and the teacher said, don't have any expectations. I'm like, it's me, I have tons of expectations.
Mm.
So my goal is 50 girls, to get 50 girls to sign up. I had 120 sign up,
Wow.
105 show up. 100
That's fabulous.
So I need 3 hours, and that's what happens. And look at those girls. Do you think those girls are feeling smart?
For sure, for sure.
You think there's a test out there that's gonna give that end result? Hell no. And
Very true, very true.
those tables were donated to area nonprofits. And the really cool thing is, one of the schools we're at, the principal called and he said, we have a few tables that wobble. I said, all right, I said, get me some girls, I'll meet you there. So I meet the girls, there's about 8 of them, and I brought some screw guns. And so they're like, how come you didn't bring a saw? I said, I don't bring saws, what do you need a saw for? Well, we need to fix it with a saw. I said, how do you know that? You haven't used a saw. They're like, well, how are we gonna fix it with a drill? I said, I don't know, you tell me. So I have them stand back and look at the table. Again, right? You just question the hell out of these kids. They want the answer. They're gonna figure it out. So I have them stand way back and I start rocking the table, right? I said, what's going on? And I'm rocking it. And all this stuff comes out. What's going on? What's going on? You question kids. Just question them, man. They're so smart. And so they're like, well, that leg needs to be longer, and that leg is too long, and they're going back to cutting, right? I'm like, okay, there's no saw here. What's your plan B? And so they're thinking and thinking. You can see the thinking happening, and it's the coolest thing. And so then one of them always comes out with, wait, if we move that leg down, I'm like, how do you do that? And then you see the thinking again, right? And I'm like, wait, if we take the screws out. So there you go, right? So they take the screws out, they move the leg down, they screw it back together. They're completely blown away by what they just achieved. Okay, they're engineering, they're critically thinking, they're problem solving, they're teamwork. Why the hell aren't we doing this in school?
It's incredible. What you're saying, all of us as educators could definitely benefit from hearing you and having these opportunities. In the time remaining, we definitely want to cover one major program, which I think is focused on middle school girls, the STEAM program. What's set up for this opportunity?
This program is just, I thought the building was a cool program. This is just blowing my mind. So we brought in a company, Revision Energy, which is an employee-owned solar company. And then we brought in NEEP, New Hampshire Environmental Education Program. And then we purchased a curriculum called NIFTY. And then we got the curriculum for Girls Who Code. And every day is a different program.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, these girls, I'll sit with them after and I'll say, why do you like this class? And they're like, oh my God, you get to be so creative. Okay, when are you creative in school? Do you know who Sir Ken Robinson is?
No.
Oh my God, look up.
Oh, Sir Ken Robinson, most definitely.
Oh my God.
I think the most watched TED Talk ever.
My idol. He said, we're asking the wrong question. The question is not, how smart are you? The question is, how are you smart? This is how they're smart. This is how they're engaged. This is how their engagement is off the charts, right? This is true, authentic learning, hands-on. Put it in their hands. You're not gonna have issues with behavior. You're not gonna have trouble with any of these kids. These kids are learning. I mean, you take any of your really troubled kids outside and put them in nature and they become leaders. I mean, there's data that supports it. Why aren't we doing it? So this program is phenomenal. One of the programs, NIFTY, which is a really cool program, they get to create their own business model. And the plan was to create a business, but I changed it to create an initiative that's addressing an issue in the community and find a way for the community to support that. So these kids come up with ideas that you can't even imagine, and they do a presentation at the end. And it's just mind-boggling. Kids are so insanely creative. And if kids were in charge, we wouldn't have half the issues we have.
Most definitely. I know as an educator, again, I thought the basis of sort of classroom management is have an engaging curriculum and not, as you say, and model, not to sort of blame it on the students that it's their fault that they're not attentive or not into learning, but to question what are we presenting that we're asking them to learn, or the experiences we're making available to have that learning happen, which are so rich and exciting that you and your staff and others and the girls themselves provide at Girls at Work. So inspirational hearing you talk about this. You know, in the just couple of minutes left, the one other offshoot development that you've done is for adults to have some type of similar experience. Just a quick word about Team Builds, please.
So this is the same program that we do with the middle school kids and actually and the elementary girls as well. We travel to different companies come here and we have pre-cut bundles of lumber and it's all about critical thinking and problem solving and team building. And I'm telling you, when you take a group of adults who haven't built before, the panic that sets in, the question they ask is, do we have directions or instructions or something? I'm like, oh my God, no. And the panic off the charts. But the end result, once they've achieved, because I'll give them some instruction, right? And once you get them rolling, it's like things start to click and it all starts to make sense. And they're like, then they become this well-oiled machine. Well, then during that time, I mix up all the teams. So I constantly pull the leader and put them on a different team. Because if I don't, I'm gonna have competition and I don't want anything to do with competition. I want collaboration because that's what we need. And so this is such a cool program because I can do it for businesses and get them to really understand the impact this has. Because as businesses, it'll connect their team, it'll bond people in a way that they desperately need right now, especially after that pandemic. And so it's also really a game changer for them to understand why this mission is so important for young girls.
Most
An
definitely.
absolute game changer. That picture on the top is a group of women from a tree company. And they built a couple picnic tables and it's just every single group is just so fired up about what they do.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. And can imagine it would give those people and others more confidence when they tackle an IKEA project at home, perhaps.
Well, they're actually not too interested in IKEA after this because now they want to buy tools and they want
They
to
would
build.
just want to build their own things. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's such a game changer and it really bonds people in a way that companies need right now. And it's a good revenue generator for us because then it, and then the tables all get donated to area nonprofits. So it's a triple win. I mean, it's a win for everybody. And it's really important for them to understand why this matters so much with our girls. And when their employees experience it, they totally get it.
In the minute or so we have left, what are some of your current or upcoming plans?
So the goal is to get our STEAM program really up and running. We've done 2 pilot series and the goal is to really knock it out of the park and build some waiting lists so that we can expand and create a high school program. Because there's so much need for employees and when they've worked with us, these kids have survived things that are just unimaginable. And I guarantee you they'll make the hardest, most successful workers out there. And if you believe in these kids and you support them and you train them, here's the answer to all these problems, right? Workforce development. So the goal is once we have the middle school program really up and running, and we'd like to run it during the day. So once we bust them in during the day and that's to capacity, then we shift to, okay, let's look at high school now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Elaine, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here and giving us fabulous overview at Girls at Work on an opportunity and education that should be available for everybody on a daily basis. And your thoughts about that were quite eloquent as well. So continued success with all future endeavors. This was really inspirational to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.